The Drop, we're at ACS International and I'm joined here by world-renowned strength and conditioning coach, Alan Stein. Alan Stein, thank you for joining us today. We're just going to dive deep into your career and how you became, so just to get some synopsis of your journey from birth to this point right now, can you give us a little understanding on how you got here?
Well, I don't know how quick it'll be because it's been almost 40 years since birth.
40?
Yeah, I'll turn 40 in the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
So hopefully I look and act a little bit younger. I'm clinging to my youth. Basketball has always been my number one passion ever since I can remember, kindergarten age. I've just been drawn to the game. I grew up at a time where, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan were transforming the game, but also transforming culture. And I just gravitated towards the game. As I got older, played in high school and had an opportunity to play college basketball down in North Carolina, and started to have an equal affinity for the performance side. And getting myself in great shape and working on my agility and my quickness was something I had a very high interest in. So I realized that when I graduated, that was going to be a unique way for me to stay close to the game, was to carve out a niche on the performance side. And looking back, that's been 20 years, but the fact that I get to make my living in the sport I love, in the industry I love, impacting young people, which is something that's very, very important to me. I'm just very blessed and very thankful to get to do this for a living. This is work. Yeah. I get to come to London to do basketball with kids, and somebody calls that work. It's amazing. I'm very thankful.
Great. And the interesting part is you pretty much started out when the whole strength and conditioning was somewhat new, which was, you could probably say right now, the field is somewhat saturated, whereas every player's friend is now trying to be a strength and conditioning coach. Over the last years, what do you think have been the biggest challenges for you in helping professional athletes overcome some of the mental as well as physical challenges?
It's interesting that you brought that up. So when it first started, again, it's not that long ago, 20 years ago, less than a third of NBA teams even had a strength and conditioning consultant at the time. Now, obviously, every NBA team and almost every Division I program has a basketball-specific strength and conditioning staff, not even just one coach anymore. Yeah. It's grown to a performance staff where they have someone that does nutrition, someone that does massage, someone that does strength and conditioning. It's amazing how it's grown in the last 20 years. So in the very beginning, my challenge was convincing basketball players and coaches that they needed to do this type of training, that it would elevate their skill sets to be the best player they could be. And it was tougher because, to be honest, really the only guy that was into it back in the day was Michael Jordan. Now, thankfully, he was the best player to ever play the game, so that made it easier to legitimize. But it's a much easier sell now because LeBron and Kobe and KD and Steph Curry, all of those guys do this stuff. Yeah. And they've even taken it up another level. They do yoga, they do Pilates, they have their own private chefs, they do pool workouts. It's an easier sell for me to talk to kids now because the people they want to emulate are all doing it. Larry Bird didn't do this stuff. Magic Johnson didn't do this stuff. So that part's actually been a real help. The hardest part is basketball players just want to play basketball. Kids want to run up and down and play 5-on-5 and they want to put up shots. They don't love doing the performance stuff. So the biggest challenge for me is finding a way to make the performance stuff fun and engaging so they'll at least tolerate it enough to do it consistently. I'm never going to be able to match what a skill trainer can do or a coach can do because the game is a lot more fun than really getting down to the nitty-gritty of strength and conditioning. But I try to find ways to make it very basketball specific and get kids engaged so they enjoy it. And if you can find ways to make anyone enjoy what they're doing, you're going to get a better result.
So you do these for professional athletes, but you're here today working with 5 to 18-year-olds. What do you think is fundamental in teaching them about strength and conditioning right now versus later on down the road?
Well, most of it is just creating the foundation that the habits that they start now are what are going to carry them through when they get older. So, when I can work with young players, and that's really my passion. I would prefer to work with children over NBA players just because I can make more of an impact. And if I can teach them what they need from a habit standpoint to be successful, that's my number one goal for doing this. Obviously, I want to share some effective drills and exercises and some concepts, but most of it's about teaching them and giving them the blueprint and the roadmap they need to be able to follow their dreams. And that's why I just really, really enjoy working with kids. And it's amazing to me how global the game of basketball is now. I mean, even just 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing these kind of locally, and then they expanded regionally, and then, you know, a little bit nationally. And, you know, now again, I get to come to another country and see another culture and meet other people, all because the game of basketball unites us. And I find that to be very special.
So interesting. So you're based in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Which is probably top 3 in the nation for high school basketball players.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges you see with 15, 16, 17-year-olds getting ready to transition into or hopefully get into the university NCAA environment?
Yeah, now I'm obviously biased because I'm on the performance side, but I think one of the biggest things, it's their body. You know, they go, again, I'm showing my age, I used to listen to Boys to Men, but that's literally what players are doing now. You go from high school, you're playing against boys or girls, and then you're going to be playing against men or women, and the body is significantly different. I mean, everybody hits their maturity, physical maturity at a different time. But, you know, you're talking about 15 and 16-year-olds, and then you go to college, you're playing against 20 and 21-year-olds. That's a huge difference. You know, it's usually a significant weight difference, 10 to 15 pounds per position, but it's also a huge strength difference, just a physical maturity overall. So I would say the gap between bodies between high school and college is even bigger than the gap between skill sets between high school and college. And that's the biggest thing that I think they really need to focus on, you know, prior to ascending to that level.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, British culture, especially within the basketball industry, everyone wants to go to America. Everyone wants to become the next LeBron and whatnot. But it's a challenge for us, not more so from just playing basketball, but from being able to get papers and whatnot.
Yeah.
In order to help the next generation of basketball players in the UK, what recommendations would you give to them in regards to getting their bodies ready to play on the American scale?
Well, from a body standpoint, nutrition plays a huge role. And I tell players, and I'm very blunt, you know, if you eat like crap, you're going to look like crap, play like crap, and feel like crap. No one wants any of those things. And I usually use a different 4-letter word, but I'm respectful of the camera. So it's real important they own their nutrition. But I also want them to understand that while we highlight the running and jumping, that's especially boys, that's what all kids want to do. They want to run, they want to dunk because that's what's cool, that's what's sexy, that's why we watch SportsCenter. But basketball athleticism is so much more than that. You got to talk about balance and reaction and hand-eye coordination and mobility and core strength. So I first and foremost, I want players to understand that just doing some vertical jump exercises and bench presses is not going to get it done. You need to attack the whole person when it comes from a performance standpoint. So getting them to buy into that is paramount. And that's actually an easier sell because some of the quickness, reaction, hand-eye coordination drills are some of the most fun and more engaging drills. So the kids actually like that. Most kids would rather do a tennis ball reaction drill than a set of push-ups or squats. So it's a little bit easier to sell, you know, when we talk about being very, very comprehensive.
Of all the players that you've worked with, could you name a couple that have been the most impressive with regards to their attention to detail with regards to strength and conditioning and practicing continuation of being able to develop their skills off the court?
For sure. Well, you know what's interesting? So the most recognized players, and I don't use that to name drop, I only use it because it's what will get kids to sit up a little taller in their seat and really lean in to listen to what you and I are talking about. Kevin Durant and Victor Oladipo are two players who are obviously very, very accomplished players now, but they always embraced the process. They always understood that you can't skip steps in order to be great. You got to climb every rung of that ladder, and that's very, very impressive. I mean, Victor Oladipo, being a recent DeMatha grad, I mean, he played on our freshman team as a 9th grader. He played on the JV team as a 10th grader and didn't even get much shine as a junior in high school. You know, so he was technically a late bloomer, but he embraced the process. We have an era of entitlement now in the United States that I don't know if it's as rampant here as it is there, but most kids, they come to DeMatha, they expect to play varsity as a 9th grader. They expect to be a starter on the varsity, and it doesn't work that way. You have to pay your dues. You got to be in the gym. Like we tell our guys all the time, if the only time you come into the gym is when we have practice or games, you're never going to be very good. Correct. And Victor and KD are two guys that really understand that, you know, I mean, they were always in the gym. You show up to the gym, they've already been there for an hour. Practice is over and you leave, they're still in there. You still hear the ball bouncing. I mean, they were so dedicated to being the best they could be at their craft. That's one of the main reasons they're successful. Now, again, I'm not taking away that both of those guys were born with some special gifts that most human beings weren't born with, but, you know, there's a lot of 6'9" guys walking the earth right now that don't play in the NBA. So anyone that says, a guy like KD, well, that's just a gift from God. He was born with certain tools, but he had to maximize those tools through relentless work, and that's why he's so great.
He's a lot lighter than most other 6'9" guys in the league.
Absolutely.
He's definitely triumphed over there.
And Stephen Curry's another one.
Yeah.
Was he born with some advantages of having a father that was a sharpshooter in the NBA for a dozen years? Of course, that would be an advantage for anyone. But anyone that just says, well, he's only a good shooter because his dad was in the NBA is not paying respect to the hours that young man has put into the gym. I mean, he has taken, for every shot you see him take right now for the Warriors, he's taken 1 million of those shots when there's been no one else in the gym. That's why he's the best shooter in the game, and in my opinion, probably the best shooter of all time, because of what he does behind the scenes. And I just want to make sure that most kids and most fans aren't privy to that information. All they can do is turn on the TV and watch when the lights are on and the cheerleaders start dancing. I'm able to see what these guys do behind the scenes that enables them to be so great. And I always want to make sure that I preach that message, whether I'm in London or I'm back home, so kids understand that. These guys aren't great by accident. They're great because they embrace the process. And if you embrace the process, you give yourself the best chance to be successful. It doesn't guarantee it. And that's one of the hardest truths in life is, well, you mean I can work hard and still not get what I want? Yeah, absolutely. That's life, but that's tough. But I can guarantee you that if you don't work hard, you have no shot. There's no way you'll get what you want if you don't. And that's really the fundamental pillar that I try and preach about when I come to these events. The best part about the game being global now, and I've heard a lot of folks in the general London area say maybe basketball isn't as prominent here as it is maybe in the States or in some other countries. But the game is so global now, and we are so interconnected through social media and online. At the end of the day, if you can play, they will find you. And by they, I'm talking about universities and colleges in the United States. Absolutely. They will find you. So you don't have to worry about exposure events. You don't have to worry if you come from a very small province or a suburb, and they will find you. And I think that's very powerful. That's one of the reasons that the game is so global. I've been going to Halifax, Nova Scotia for the last 8 years, which is a real small province in Canada. And there was a kid a few years ago, scraggly little white kid, said, I want to play at DeMatha. And it's like, respectfully, my friend, you don't look, walk, or talk like the guys we got at DeMatha. And he was so dedicated to wanting to make that happen. He followed up, and long story short, he basically said, I'm moving from Canada, I'm coming to DeMatha whether you like it or not. And he did that, and 3 years later, he just earned a Division I scholarship to play at UAB. He's one of the best shooters that I've ever seen. He's a total gym rat, but he was coming from an area where basketball is not very big, and he found a way to work his way into the system. So I know for myself, I'm not a big believer in excuses, because we all have them. You probably have 20 of them, I've got 20 of them, but you know what? We can't hide behind those things. So for anyone that says today in 2016, well, it's not fair, it's all politics, I don't get to play in these exposure events. If you can play, they will find you. So don't worry about who's watching you. Worry about being the best player that you're capable of, and someone will see it, and then you'll be able to ascend and climb the ladder and achieve whatever dreams you have.
Funny thing is, I remember all of that growing up, going to all of those 9-to-5 exposure camps. You had those kids who thought they were extremely talented and were mad that they weren't playing or getting the looks for the D1 scholarships. Well, thank you, Alan Stein, for your words of wisdom.
You're welcome.